Hello, my name is Judith Crow, and as part of Book Week Scotland this year, I would like to tell you a little bit about reading for the future. So I'm thinking about myself now as a reader, although I'm going to kind of go back in time a little bit and look at some of the books that have shaped me. This is part of Crowvis's partnership event with Book Week Scotland, which is we're so fortunate to be able to be taking part in that. And I should say as well that the reason I've come up with the theme, I haven't come up with the theme. That's a good reason. It's the theme for Book Week Scotland is future. So I would like to tell you about 5 books which shaped me. Now, as a family, we absolutely love books. So I grew up in a household which was always full of books. We now live in a place with more space than we have done previously, and yet somehow every single room, apart from the toilets, has so many books in it. You can't walk into a room in this house without finding books. And there's also books in the kind of throwaways as well. So as you go through the hall, or on the landings, on the stairs. There are books everywhere. And that really shaped who I am, not just as a reader, but then also as I started to make that transition into being a writer as well. It's really difficult for someone who's been surrounded by books their entire life to pick out a few books that have shaped them. I often talk about certain books, so for example, The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, or Charmed Life by Diana Wynne Jones as being hugely important to shaping the person I am, and that is certainly the case. But what what I'm doing today is thinking about 5 other books, although some of them, it just wouldn't be a list of books that have shaped me if they didn't appear on it. I should say as well, list isn't exhaustive. I try to avoid any which I have like more kind of personally precious memories attached to, which aren't to do with the book itself, but maybe to do with the fact that I remember someone reading it to me. So basically, like Children of Green Know by Lucy Boston. I cannot imagine my life without that book, but part of that is that Mum reads it to us every year still, so we'll be starting that soon. And now we have to record bits of it to send away to siblings who live in different places. But really, I wonder if that book would mean as much to me without my mum having read it to us. So there was that, things like my dad was always great at reading Mr. Men books too, so that's a really important part of my childhood as well. But I wanted to avoid something that I directly associate with being read to me, because I think that's a little bit biased, because I have the special memories of the special people that have really changed that. So the first book is basically the first book I remember reading. It wasn't this copy. My copy was red. Well, this is my copy, but my first copy was red. I don't know if the camera chain turns this around, but hopefully you can see this is Hop on Pop by Dr. Seuss. I got this book for Christmas when I was probably 3, maybe 3 or 4. And I read it and read it and read it. And before I got my own copy of it, I read and read and read my sister's copy of it. I was an early reader. I can't remember a time before I could read. And part of that was the effect of Mum particularly reading to me all the time. And as a teacher, you learn that that is hugely important for children to be read to. Yes, so I was an early reader, and the first book I remember reading was Hop on Pop. It's not the world's most challenging book. Dr. Seuss wrote for people who were not necessarily confident readers. So whether that was because they were young or whether it was because they were slightly older, but found reading challenging. So his use of rhyme is a really important thing. Yeah, Hop on Pop. It is a genius book. Hop, pop. We like to hop. We like to hop on top of Pop. Pop in my family wouldn't have put up with that. But he has many other fine qualities. Right, okay, the second one is one I think I got in my stocking, and I will show it to you and see if you can guess how old I was when I got this book. So it is, hopefully, you've guessed that I was 6. Now We Are 6 by A.A. Milne. A.A. Milne, of course, most famous for creating the character of Winnie the Pooh. And we've got Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin on this front cover. And the illustrations are by E.H. Shepard, who illustrated most of A.A. Milne's work originally. I have nothing against Winnie the Pooh. I am more of a Rupert person personally. If I were to choose my bear allegiance, I would choose Rupert. But the poems in this book are hilarious and wonderful to read and wonderful to say, wonderful to hear read, to hear acted. They're a little more complex than the When We Were Very Young, which my little sister got at the same time as I got this one. But I remember reading this one, and it's full of great poems like King John's Christmas. I always found that one a bit sad until the end. And yeah, so also Forgiven, which was a big important poem for my family. It's all about Alexander Beetle, and that's what my parents called their first child. Not like actually officially called him Alexander Beetle, but he's officially called Alexander, but it was a special poem for him as well. So again, we've got that poetry because that is a wonderful thing for kids to read and to listen to. Now, the next two, I honestly don't know the order that these came in, but I'm going to go with this one first. So this was given to me by, I really want to say it was my aunt and uncle, but they didn't inscribe the book, so I can't be absolutely sure. When I was just a bit older than 6, so maybe 7, and it was really, I think everyone has an Enid Blyton series that they identify with the best. So like Rupert is my bear. The mystery stories are my Enid Blyton series. I never really got into the Famous Five as much. My siblings loved that. I did enjoy the Secret Seven, some of the books, but this is the one which I read all of them. And this really was one of those books which bridged the gap between that early child reading of Hop on Pop and Now We Are 6, and went on to kind of the middle child reading. So when you start reading novels as a child, and they're great, the mystery books. So they create this love of mysteries that I still have. So we still love like reading and watching mystery stories, and so I think for me it kind of stems from this book. The other one, which I couldn't remember about the time, and this isn't the original copy for me personally either, but one of the kinds of books that we had a lot of when we were little were Ladybird books, and one of the Ladybird books that I really loved was Lorna Doone. And eventually, after a little while, I got to the point where what was in the Ladybird book wasn't enough because I'd read the Ladybird book so many times. And I found a kind of abridged copy of it in a book sale, like a church book sale or something. So I read that, and then I moved on to the full copy. So this is actually a different copy. And it's was probably one of the strangest things I did as a child was that this would be the book that I would be reading most of the time. I absolutely loved it, and it has a very special place in my heart because it was my favourite book for a very, very long time, and I feel like I betray it if I ever say my favourite book is anything other than Lorna Doone. I actually started collecting copies of Lorna Doone as well around the same time, and I have many. I have not counted them actually, but I have very many. So it kind of shaped more than just like the story, the actual physical holding the book. I started to collect copies of Lorna Doone, and I have some beautiful ones that have been gifted to me, particularly quite old copies with fantastic illustrations and things. So that was really my favourite book for a long time, and like I say, I still feel that I'm betraying it if I ever say another book is my favourite book. But as I got into a kind of like 9, 10, 11, I got into more kind of grown-up books. So actually they were less grown-up than Lorna Doone. They were things like Jacqueline Wilson, and a friend loved Judy Blume, but I never really got into that. What I really, really loved, the series I really loved, was Anastasia, because Jacqueline Wilson I thought was fantastic and I loved reading her stuff. And she wrote for children who didn't have anyone else to write for them. You know, she was writing for the children who were from broken homes, and at that time it was, or in the care system, in the case of Tracy Beaker, of course, and at that time particularly, there wasn't much written about these children um, who came from broken homes, and I think what she did was fantastic. But for me, not coming from a broken home, I needed the books that gave you an idea of starting to grow up, starting to enter into teenage years in a family. So I kind of turned my back on Jacqueline Wilson a bit and I went to Anastasia. I read most of the Anastasia books. I finished like the later ones much, much later. So when I was about 15 or 16, I took them out of the library, but I read the first 4, I think, very quickly when I was about 11, maybe. And it's a story of a girl who's just a normal girl, basically. And she has very normal things happen in her life. And I think that was a really good thing for me to read because that was something I could associate with because, you know, I had a very fortunate life. No one has a life that's without problems, but I had a very fortunate family life, and it was as equally important for me to be able to access literature that reflected my life than it would be for anyone to do that. And I think that's why we need the diversity of authors and the diversity of stories that can then put that across to people. So every child and every adult, in fact, can find a book which has a character which they can identify with that is going through similar things to what they are going through. So they are 5 books which I read in the past, but they do continue to shape the future of my life because they've shaped the person that I am. I did another little video which was much shorter than this one, but I did another little video which was about talking about the same thing from the point of view of being an author. But this is really me sharing 5 books with you that I can't imagine what my future would have been like if they hadn't come along. Not that they would have been particularly like weird or anything or dark, but just that they really shaped the person that I am. And they are books that I can still go back to and think fondly of or enjoy still as an adult. I know as I'm saying this, there are children who are out there who are discovering these books that are going to change the person they are and shape them for the future. And that is such an exciting thought. And I think that is something which, as a teacher, when you see a child loving a book, you can see that spark happening. And yeah, it's something that's quite magical. because you've been there. You've been that person who's found yourself in a book and lost yourself in a book and created a whole new person because of what this book has made you. Thank you for listening to my ramble, and I hope you find the other videos for the Clovis Book Week Scotland event as well. And yeah, so thanks for listening. Bye.